This is Noteworthy, a podcast brought to you by the Westford Academy Ghostwriter. We feature impressive musicians from all different grades, exploring their talents and motivations. Today, we are featuring Claire Shea for episode 2.
Oh, hey guys, I'm Claire Shea. I'm a senior at Westford Academy.
What or who was your motivation to pursue music?
My family's always been pretty musical. My dad actually writes songs, which not many people know about, and he's not a great singer, but he writes really good songs, and he played the guitar. And then my mom was always in the church choir, and she was in her senior musical. They did, I think it was like Sesame Street, I feel like. She was like the crazy chef, I think. And so I'd always be dancing and singing around the house because my dad always put on Bruce Springsteen and, all those old classics. And I was in school one day, and my best friend at the time told me, hey, there's this summer camp where you can sing on stage, but you'll also be acting, so theater. And I was like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. Like, I like singing, and I don't really have a vehicle to show anyone, so yeah. And then, so that summer camp was SSPA, Summer School for the Performing Arts, and I went there every year, and now I'm a counselor. And I get to teach the little kids music.
At the camp, you would do certain musicals. Was there a particular musical that maybe was your favorite, or that when you started going there, what made you want to keep doing it?
So the first musical, it wasn't my favorite out of all of them because I was so young, but I was in Seussical, the musical, and I was a Who because I was too little to get anything else, so they put all the little kids as little Whoville people. And I loved it. And I think the reason why I kept going back is you only have 2 performances. So the end goal not necessarily is the performance, but it's like getting there. So all the counselors were always really supportive. They would open the door for you when you drive up and get dropped off. All the counselors open the door for you. They call you by name. You get to pick your electives, and they're always telling you, like, that was really good, but here's how you can improve, but, like, in the nicest way possible. And if you were having a bad day, they'd always try to cheer you up. And so I think I'd go back for the people and also just the music.
At WA, Did you get into theater right when you went to WA?
Yeah, I did. Because the camp is pretty much WADA, I would say. It's kind of like a funnel to Western Academy Theater Arts, as bad as that kind of sounds. But Mr. Towers runs it. So I've known Mr. Towers since I was in 5th grade. So obviously it's just something you kind of did. It's like how you would go from middle school to high school, you wouldn't question it. I did not question it. I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to do, like, the WADA shows. So I went right in, and then the musical we were doing was Evita, and that was a lot of fun. I was a villager. Had a really nice costume.
So is Mr. Towers, what has he been in your life?
Sometimes I see him more than my own dad, and he's been like an uncle, kind of. I didn't really get, because he's really scary.
Yeah.
He's really intimidating. So I would know him for a long time, but I never really got to know him until this year, especially being in the competition show where he's directing it. There's like 6 principals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's like an uncle, and he's to me, and he's really supportive of everyone, and would always explain why things would happen, like, I didn't cast you in the show because, or like, you got this part because, and things like that. He's always been really uplifting, and I know I can go talk to him anytime I want. I haven't done that because I haven't really needed to. I'm shy, and I've always kept to myself, and I would just keep going on stage, and he would always encourage me to, take these parts, and like, a huge thing in theater is risk-taking. He always says that, like, healthy risks, obviously, but, like, risk-taking, like, throw stuff out there, like, it doesn't matter if it's wrong. I'll tell you if it's wrong, and then you'll fix it. Like, that's the worst thing that could happen. I'm not telling you you're a bad person, you're not stupid, it just didn't work, so you try something else. And I guess the whole mentality he's created in the department has really, like, allowed me to let go a little bit. Like, not everyone has to like me, and I don't have to like everyone, but I have to get along with everyone. And it kind of made me feel like I could be myself, and I didn't have to be a people pleaser, because I was a people pleaser.
I wanted to find out what Mike Towers had to say about Claire Shea's involvement in WADA, so I found him one day in the black box after school.
So it's a very rewarding facet that I get to see such a lengthy journey with my students, which is not common for a high school educator. Typically, you get to see a student for a year, a semester, some, of course, not at all. Maybe a student takes 2 of your courses. Well, Claire, I've known for 7 years and has taken many, if not most, of the courses that I've offered. And I've worked with her probably somewhere between 10 and 15 productions, if not 20. So what's most striking about Claire Shea is the remarkable journey that she's been on and what I've been able to witness in the construction of the woman that she is. She is incredibly inquisitive, very curious. She was always known, even by me, to be somebody who is shy. But that shyness really is a variety of anything but shy qualities that are more about curiosity and interest. She didn't speak because she didn't want to miss anything. She was so in tune with what was going on. Always what mesmerized me about Claire was her wide gaze, her eyes. I can remember describing her like a nocturnal animal because her gaze was always so wide, so just like the nocturnal animal, to not miss one bit of light. And that is how I still to this day see her. Her eyes are wide. She's always listening. She has developed a tremendous sense of herself and has confidence in herself as a woman, as a thinker, as an artist, as a person. But the childlike qualities of wonder and curiosity are still very, very present in her. And perhaps some still think that she is shy. But I would assure you that she is more filled with wonder and awe of the things that surround her than she is shy.
Claire then went on to talk about all she has learned in WADA and how she can apply it to the outside world.
It's okay to want things and to be yourself and to be rejected from people, because if they don't like you for you, they're not worth being around. You don't have to like everyone. And you meet a lot of characters in plays, too, that are, like, applicable to people in your real life, and you get to know, like, why. Because you get inside the characters' heads.
Right.
So, like, if I... okay, so I'm playing Hermia right now, and she's, like, a 45-year-old woman whose, like, husband always cheated on her, so she's, like, always felt like she wasn't good enough. And, like, obviously I don't really know any 45-year-olds, like, that are close to me like that, but, like, there are people who definitely have those characteristics. And so you get inside these characters' heads and you understand why people are the way they are. And it kind of lets you have a little more mercy, I guess, in the real life. And you kind of think, like, okay, well, why are they that way? Like, they're not just mean for the sake of being mean. Like, there's a reason. And you don't have to like them, but you just have to be nice to them. And you can understand where they're coming from. And you can let them go and be friends with other people. They don't have to be your friend. And... you just learn a lot about people and how to interact with people, because that's what you're doing on stage. You're interacting with characters that aren't real.
Even though Claire has been performing for years, I wondered if the nerves still got the best of her. I'm sure the nerves don't really go away, but...
Yeah, they don't. It's really nerve-wracking, especially on, like, Friday night shows or whatever, when you could have, like, 700 people in the audience at one time, just for one of the shows. And to go out and know you have to sing songs and, like, do things correctly. Well, I mean, I guess there is no right, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to mess up the notes on a song.
Yeah.
Or, like, mess up the blocking or skip lines or anything. And, it's really scary. I'd always get really nervous before, but as soon as I would go on and, like, flip the hay out of the way and be like, yoo-hoo. You know, you just keep going, and, like, you have your partners, and if you miss a line, they'll catch you, and they'll skip over it, or they'll help prompt you for that line. And you just respond with the people, and then the show is over, and it feels like you've been on stage for 5 minutes, but you've been on for 2 hours. And it's, yeah, once you get into the run, it's just works. I get really nervous for auditions. Like, I get very shaky, because as much as we have to remember, like, they want to cast you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they want you to be good because they don't want to sit in that room for another, like, 5 hours looking
Right.
through people. Like, they want you to be the one that they can cast. But it's so hard to get that in your mind. You just think, like, it is their job to judge you.
Mm-hmm.
And to judge whether or not you are good enough for the part or, like, right for the part. So I always get, like, really nervous, like, oh, I really want this, but, like, what if I'm not good enough? Or what if there's someone else? And, like, I have to do my song right or else I'll never know, like, what I really have. And I get really nervous for probably the first show auditions and, like, tech week, because then it becomes real.
Yeah.
The nerves never really go away.
What was it like to sing the national anthem at the...
Honestly, that was probably the most nervous I've ever been for performance ever, because it's in front of all of my peers, even people I don't know, and, like, people, not that it really matters, like, I guess, not the popular kids, but, you know, the kids you see around that you don't know who, like, I guess are high on the social ladder. Like, it doesn't really matter, but you know what I mean?
I know
like,
what you mean. Now it doesn't really matter, but they're known as, like...
Yeah, they're known as, like, the popular kids or whatever,
Yeah.
and, like, they don't know that you... They probably know that you do theater, but they don't really know how you sound. They don't really know that you sing. And, like, you have to get it right, 'cause it's also, like, a pride thing for your class. Like, you have to have a really good person sing the national anthem to show off to the younger grades. And, like, you want to be a role model, and it's just really stressful. And the national anthem's a really hard song to sing, because it has a really broad range. It's really stressful. It was a lot of fun. Such a rush.
Afterwards, hearing the applause, were you, like, sigh
Yeah, I was like,
relief?
oh, God. Thank God it's over. It was stressful, but it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it.
I'm glad you did, too.
Oh, thanks. It was so scary. But,
yeah. And also, I want to ask you for being voted class actress.
yes. I don't know why. Really super happy. I've always wanted a superlative. Like, you see those high school movies, and it's kind of like, who's going to get a superlative? Like, oh my God. And I didn't ever think I was going to be in the running, but I was voted for it, and it just makes me really happy. You shouldn't need, like, validation from people, like, for your art and for who you are, but, like, it's always really nice when you get those, like, that recognition. So it was really exciting.
Right.
And success is always great, but you should never be after that. It should just be a product of who you are, and you should get things because you deserve to get things, and that you're right for the part. That's my mentality.
I asked Claire to sing something special for us at the end of the interview, so she sang from the musical Allegiance that just finished its run on Broadway.
She watched amazed as that little boy simply pulled his own weight through to swing higher, higher than she dared, higher. How do you swing so high and not be scared? Higher, he could touch the sky. Right then she knew that he would also one day tell her goodbye.
Claire's dad showed me how Claire and her sisters have sang around the house together since they were little. He then went on to tell me that Claire has stolen the show plenty of times before Young Frankenstein.
So Claire has always liked singing, and singing in shows because it involves singing with other people, each with their own part. I think that the culmination of her singing and acting career occurred in the fall when she got to play the lead actress in Young Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the best example, I think, of her her sharing with the world her talent. Now I have one other story to tell. So the story that I have to tell was probably the breakout moment for Claire, not her big break in singing, but the moment in which she, and you know she's a very shy girl, but the moment that she put the shyness aside and showed the world she had talent was at a junior high choral assembly or choral recital, and she was to sing American Honey, and that was her solo. And when she was called down to sing her solo, they had technical difficulties and couldn't get the accompanying music to play. Mm-hmm. So she, after a very long, awkward period of standing there and just being cheerful, they had her get back up into the group, and they moved on with the concert. And then they called her back later to sing again, and again there was technical difficulties. And her teacher came down to the stage where Claire was and just said, "I'm sorry, we can't get the music to work." And Claire, and then she asked Claire, "Do you want to go on?" And Claire nodded. And so now in her first solo performance, a cappella, because there's no backing to help her, she sang American Honey. And at first, she was very stiff and reserved and soft-spoken. She has a good voice, but she wasn't letting it out. And then as the song went on, she began to move across the stage and got more comfortable. And then she switched hands with the microphone and got more animated, and her voice began to come out. And by the end of the song, she was belting it out, and the people went absolutely nuts, the entire auditorium. I cried like a baby because I was so frightened that her first time singing would be, terrible experience, to be suddenly having to use just your voice in front of all these strangers. And if it didn't go perfectly, it would be something that could traumatize her. And yet it turned into one of those make-believe moments where, the little voice starts and then builds and builds, and finally everybody was hearing her sing her heart out, and she stole the show.
As Mr. Towers and Mr. Shea can attest to, Claire may be a shy girl, but she's a shy girl with a big voice.